Hello, friends. Today we're going to talk about Yule's Scepter of Divinity. Sometimes I pronounce it Oil Scepter. That's a little math joke for you guys. Highbrow humor. Anyways, let's talk about the item and what it brings us. So, this time, we actually are going to pay attention to the stats a little bit. All the other items, we kind of don't care so much about the stats. But Yule's Scepter of Divinity, specifically the mana regen, it is kind of significant to the item. For all the other items, the mana regen was kind of low. I think like 1.5 for Spirit Vessel. Whereas Yule's Scepter of Divinity is, it's at 5. It's pretty significant. And some heroes truly do have mana regen issues, and they need to solve that to play effectively. And so now it kind of does matter for Yule's Scepter a little bit more. But we'll get into that later. Well, that's kind of it. I don't know if I even need to go into it later. But the active is kind of the next part of this item, which forms like the rest of the reasons why you might buy this item. You can target yourself or the enemy, and you cyclone them for 2.5 seconds. So then, thinking about that, why would we get this item? Setup is probably... This isn't in any strict order necessarily, but I do think setup is probably one of the bigger reasons you might buy Yule's Scepter. Specifically, you buy it for your own hero. It's not so much about who's on the enemy team, but that your hero needs a setup mechanic. We'll get into the heroes later, but someone like Jakiro, whose ice path is so slow that he really likes having a Yule so that he can lift someone up and then just easily ice path underneath them. It also makes it, kind of an instant disable, because before you slowly ice path at someone, and even if they can't get out of the way and like walk somewhere, maybe they see it coming and they can BKB or use their own Yules or something like that and dodge the ice path for a little bit. Whereas now you run into someone, you Yules, which has no cast time, which is a very good part of this item. It lifts them into the air, and then you ice path underneath it. When they land, it instantly stuns them. They can't react at all. That kind of shifts his stun from being slow and unreliable to instant. That's why the setup part of this is so big for heroes like Jakiro. Then you have the basic Dispel, either for yourself or kind of less used is it can actually dispel the enemy. So on yourself, it tends to be like a silence. You get hit by a silence, you need to dispel it. You Yules, you're no longer silenced. Downside of this is that because you're actually Cyclone for 2.5 seconds, it's like silencer ults, right? A big team fight breaks out, you need to use your spell, silencer ult, so you Yules yourself. You're gonna get rid of the silence, but 2.5 seconds, the fight could be decided at that point. That's kind of just what it is, because the other options for supports are like Greaves or Lotus Orb, which are very expensive. And those are instant dispels to get rid of silence, but they're pretty expensive, and they tend to not offer the same level of utility as a Yule's does for the price. So that's just something we have to live with, and it is something to consider. Sometimes it will matter. Maybe it's like a bit later in the game, and you're deciding between kind of a late Yule's or maybe a fast Lotus Orb. Or maybe even Lotus Orb is just a weird item to buy for most position 5s. But sometimes you need that instant dispel. If you're like an Oracle or something. And the team fight is heavily reliant on you getting your ult off in time. Then maybe Yule's is not the item for you, because it's not an instant dispel on yourself. And for the enemies, something like Wukong, Monkey King. When he hits you 4 times, procs his passive, gets that bonus damage and lifesteal. Before he can hit anyone, if you Yules him, it actually just gets rid of the buff. Another instance is like Darkseer's hasted movement surge. As soon as it just got changed. I think it still dispels it. But he uses it, you Yules him, he drops, and he doesn't have his speed boost anymore. So you can actually dispel the enemy and use it offensively. Then you can also, I almost said cancel channels. Cancel channels. So notably is the teleport out if you're a hero like, I was going to say Bloodseeker, but imagine you're a support hero. Maybe like Treant Protector doesn't really buy Yules, but let's just go with it for now. Someone who doesn't have a way to cancel TPs. And so then every time they go for a kill, the enemy's just TPing out. Getting the Yules can help solve that. It can also be another way to handle, say, Crystal Maiden channeling, Bane's ultimate, Witch Doctor. Like, sometimes you only have one stun, and you may need to use it somewhere else. And then it's like, oh, now they began channeling. Now what do I do? My stun's on cooldown for like 10 seconds. If you have a Yules, it gives you two options. So that way, oh, I can disable this guy, and this person still has to wait to channel because I still have another way to cancel it. Kiting. So this is particularly good against melee enemy carries, but to an extent, it works on anyone, really. Where if they're running at you, you can either use it on them and, cycling them for 2.5 seconds while you run away, and maybe your entire team runs away. Or maybe it's just like you use it on yourself and hope your team comes in and save you. When you would do one or the other kind of varies. It's kind of hard to say right now. Maybe when we go over the heroes, it might be a little easier. But that's something you can do. It can help you kite. Not to mention the move speed from it helps a little bit. And then the mana regen, which I guess we already talked about. But truly, some heroes want to spam out their spells, and that's how they impact the game. Some like Jakiro, who wants to push out all the lanes as quickly as he can, within reason. But if he does that, he's going to use up all his mana pretty quickly. He still needs to do that, though. It's kind of like what he does. So what do? You just have to have a lot of mana regen so that you can continuously cast spells and you fulfill your role. And so in this case, Yules will solve that. And what I kind of lost track there is that I wanted to say you rarely buy Yules for just one of these 5 reasons, right? So just because you need mana, but you need none of these others, like, you wouldn't really buy Yules because you're not going to make use of anything else. Yule Scepter, you usually need to hit several of these things. Now, mana regen, probably always going to be useful. Kiting, almost always there's a melee or a ranged carry who might try to kill you and you can kite them. It's always nice to cancel channels. Everyone has teleports, but some supports and some heroes like Enigma who might channel an ultimate, that adds more value to Yules. The basic Dispel, some games you need it, some games you don't. And then the setup, only some heroes need it, others don't. So usually, actually, let's just go to the heroes and we can talk about it. But usually you need to hit at least several of these categories, if not all of them. So here we are. Let's go over some heroes. And it's a little different. So this time the categories have changed a bit. So this top row is synergy with your own hero. If you are not one of these heroes, as a support, I'm only talking about supports here, it's kind of unlikely you will buy a Yule Scepter. A lot of these heroes, in fact, all of them, are related to the setup aspect of Yules, which makes it a potential core item, if not like an always must buy. But, like Jakiro's my example. Because it's so good in his setup and it gives him things he likes like move speed and mana regen, but especially that setup, it is almost always an item I am thinking about on Jakiro. Now, I may need a different item, like maybe it's a 4-staff game, and then it becomes more important to buy a 4-staff. Or maybe there's a silence in the game, and there's a core that keeps going for me, and I need to kite him. Like, those other categories help boost the value of Yules and make me decide, like, oh, maybe I'll buy it first item. But if I'm not one of these heroes, like say I'm an Oracle, and even if I need a Dispel or a way to cancel channels or something, it's like Yules is a really awkward item to buy for me because I just don't make use of the setup aspect of Yules so much. Now, that's not a 100% rule. Sometimes you will buy it just because you need the Dispel or you need it for, whatever other reason we might talk about here. That can be true, but generally speaking, you're probably one of these heroes if you're thinking about buying a Yules in every game. Every other hero might think about buying it like occasionally, every now and then. So, Dark Willow, let's go through them. It's just fantastic setup. Look at her spells. None of these are very instant, but you know what is instant? Yule Scepter. So you Yules them, and then you either... Well, okay, it'll depend. So, there's different combos. You could Yules them, and then drop the Bramble underneath them, and then Fear, Curse Crown, whatever. You could cast Curse Crown on them, which takes 4 seconds to go off, and then you wait a little bit, you Yules them, and so that by the time they land, the Curse Crown goes off like right then. That gives them very little time to react to the Curse Crown. And it becomes like more of a guaranteed stun. It's still a little iffy, honestly. Or another way you can use it is to like you're using Bedlam and about to die, and say Shadow Realm is off. Then you use your Yules, and your Bedlam will still do damage around you. So she just gets a lot of value out of it, and she likes to cast a lot of spells. So mana regen, everything, great. Jakiro, I already used him as my example. So the setup into Ice Path, and then the mana regen for all his stuff. He's a slow hero, likes the move speed. Boom, let's move on. Mirana, Arrow, pretty good stun. Also, really hard to hit some games. And so sometimes your team does not have a reliable initiation, and you're against an anti-mage, for example. That's kind of a tough example, but whatever, we'll go with it. So instead of just hoping your arrow hits him and not like any of his illusions, or he doesn't see it and blink out or something, you run up to him, you Yules, and then you, depending on how much time you have, you may leap away and then arrow, or like blink away something. And then as they drop from the Yules, the arrow, if the hitbox is overlapping, they instantly get stunned, and it is a guaranteed stun with a lot of work behind it. Still, sometimes that's what she needs. You're very rarely ever going to get the maximum stun from doing this, but you will get some kind of guaranteed stun so long as your timing is good. Now, Leshrac and Lina, they're classic examples. His Split Earth, her Light Strike Array, they're AoE stuns, but they don't cast instantly. So being able to Yule someone and then time it so that as they land, you stun them, gives them that setup for their stun. And it makes it a little more instant. But it's very rare to get the timing so good. So if you're playing against like a Lifestealer or a Juggernaut, it's really hard to use a Yules to set up these combos, because your timing has to be so good that the second the Yules ends and they land, your stun hits before they can rage. If there's like any amount of time in between it, they will pre-cast rage or spin or BKB while they're in the Cyclone, and they'll use it as soon as they land. The only person that doesn't work against, as far as I understand, is Jakiro, because his is a persisting stun that stands out there, which is very unique to him. And as soon as someone lands, in fact, the only other two that are like that are Chronosphere and Black Hole, as far as I know. Stuns that just exist, and if anyone touches it, they get stunned. Now, Disruptor's actually in a similar category, but it's not a stun, where, usually the Glimpse, Kinetic Field, Static Storm combo is pretty good, but some cases they have, like, the BKB, the same issue that these guys have, where it's like, the timing needs to be so perfect for it to work. If a core sees that they got glimpsed and they know they'll die, they'll BKB, and you won't get it off. But maybe you can Yules them first, and then you Ags, you ult and field below them, and so they land instantly silenced. They can't cast like say it's Juggernaut or Lifesteal. Actually, they're great examples. You try to glimpse them, he sees it, he just rages. But if you Yules him first, and then you lay the ult down in the kinetic field, he can't rage when he lands, and then he's stuck there until kinetic ends, he dies, or whatever. This is a reason a Lifestealer might buy BKB, for example. Pretty uncommon, though. And then that goes up if Disruptor buys Ags, because then it mutes the items, and that's like super good. That removes the ability to use BKBs if you Yules Ags ult them. So that's a really powerful combo. Pretty uncommon to get that point as a position 5 Disruptor. Position 4, sometimes. Ancient Apparition, same deal. Cold Feet, kind of hard stun to land because people just walk out of it. But you cast it, lift them up, and then by the time they land, they have a little bit of time to run away, and then they get stunned. So that combo used to be more popular, I think. Now, I don't see it so often anymore. I think a lot of people play him very poor nowadays, and you have to buy like other support items, which is like reasonable, but it's something that used to happen. Maybe it'll come up again. Void Spirit, Aether Remnant. I know this is a support tier list, and you might be like, why are these guys here? Sometimes people play them as 4, so I'm going to mention them. You have a Yules, you set up the Aether Remnant. Or you can set up like your Dissimulate, whatever. But he's a hero who has like these stuns, but they're unreliable, just like everyone else in this list. Common denominator when you're thinking about Yules. Death Prophet's different. She doesn't have a stun, but she benefits from Yules immensely. Now, usually she's a core, and it was only very recently that some pro teams were trying her as a support. But we'll still throw it in there because I love the idea of Death Prophet as a support. Just because I think it's cheesy and funny, even though she provides no stuns. But what's really good about it, and what's worth noting, since she'll get it as a core, is that when she uses Spirit Siphon and then Yules herself, she still heals. And so that is it's like a bait where people think they're gonna kill you. They all run in on you. You get off like 3 Spirit Siphons and then you lift yourself up. Then you heal for that 2.5 seconds and you drop and you're at like, they thought they were about to kill you and then suddenly you're at like 3/4 health and they're like, what do we do? We're standing in the middle of Exorcism. It's buying time. Because the whole time, Exorcism still does damage while you're Yules. Same with like Bedlam, that kind of thing. When you have spells that are doing damage and you just need to survive, otherwise the spell disappears, Yules buys you that 2.5 seconds. Techies, I don't play support Techies, but I believe it used to be a combo to Yules into like a Stasis Trap or into like the Blast Off. I'm not sure if they changed any timing since then. I should have double checked. But we're already in the video, so I'm committed to it. So these are the heroes that if you're playing one of these as a support, you're probably considering a Yules almost every game. Okay, let's not think about these last 3. They're not true supports, right? These first, how many, like 7 or 8? What is it? Yeah, 7. If you're playing one of these as a support, you should probably be thinking about a Yules every single game. Not that you're always going to get it first item, but that it's a potential item. Whereas, like, if you're an Oracle, I'm not even thinking about Yule Scepter most games. I don't even play Oracle, so I'm not thinking about that scenario ever. But I wouldn't be, because it's just a very uncommon item for Oracle. There might be some games you need it, but again, like, this is the category of heroes that tend to always need to think about Yules. Now let's think about enemy heroes. There's quite a few here, but we're going to go through it quickly. The highly encouraged against. So why do we get extra value against these heroes? Kunkka's X mark is almost a guaranteed death sentence against a lot of supports, especially if it's a core Kunkka. In the early game, you get X marks. That's like a death sentence. You're about to get comboed to death. In the mid to late game, if there are other heroes in the area, you're probably dead when you get pulled back. So Yules is really good because you can dodge X mark. X mark lasts 4 seconds against most people. And so if you can see the Kunkka at all, or know that the combo tends to be you X, you Q, you wait a little bit, you pull them in. That wait a little bit moment for most people is enough time to, you Yules. That's how it works. You see the Kunkka. The animation is very obvious. He goes huh, to X mark, and then he goes huh, to torrent, and then the next part is he's gonna pull you back in with the X marks, and that's when you cast Yules, and you won't get pulled back, and you won't die. And so it's really good against Kunkka. Or you see him trying to pull that combo off on a carry or something, and you Yules him, so he messes up his combo. It's just nifty like that. Now, I'm going to go out of order now and say it. The other ability, very similar to X marks, is Disruptor's Glimpse, but it does not work against Glimpse. So I want to mention that now, just in case you stop watching right here or whatever. I just think it's important to point that out here, where it only works against Kunkka's X mark for whatever reason. But if you are glimpsed and then you try to Yules yourself, you will get pulled back to wherever your spot was, regardless. And it pulls you out of Yules. It doesn't wait for Yules to end. It just like whoop yeets you. So do note that works against Kunkka, not against Disruptor. Now against Ursa. You know what's really annoying about Ursa? Enrage. This status resistance is so irritating when he has like Satanic and Sanjan Yasha or whatever, and you're stunning him and it lasts like half a second. But you know what doesn't get reduced in duration? Yule Scepter. Yule's is a standard 2.5 seconds. Even when he's enraged, even when they have status resistance, if you use Yule's, it is 2.5 seconds of disable on these kinds of heroes. So it's really good if there's a Ursa popping off. You waste a lot of his time. Even at max level, enrage is 5 seconds. I think there's a talent for it. No, not anymore. Maybe never, and I'm crazy. Point is, 5 seconds, you Yules him for 2.5 seconds. You waste half of his ultimate. And he hates that. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to run at you and kill you while this is going on, because this is like his invincibility mode. But now you're just going to waste his time on it. And that's when it's really good. You can also, if you have to, you can use yourself. Like, say he's BKB'd, but this applies to any melee core, so we're going to mention it for Ursa and then not go into it for everyone else. Where, if he's BKB'd and running at you and you're like, I don't want to die right now, use yourself. You might still die afterwards, but you have at least 2.5 seconds more. Troll Warlord, pretty good because Battle Trance gives him lifesteal and attack speed, and he is very dangerous in this time because you cannot kill him. What can we do? Again, we just lift him up. Slightly less time relative to Ursa's Enrage because this one lasts 6.5 seconds, but still, you can Yules him and your team can just disengage for a little bit, or you can set it up into a stun maybe or whatever, but you're just wasting his time. He really wants to hit people during this Battle Trance, and if you just Yules him, he's literally not doing anything besides sitting in the Cyclone. Abaddon. Borrowed Time. When he gets when this gets procced, either passively or he activates it, he wants to take a lot of damage. This is like what he wants to do, or he wants to get out in this time. So say you're just trying to disengage from a fight as Abaddon. Your ult goes off and you just want to use that 4 through 6 seconds to run away. And the enemy team, like, oh, we don't have a stun. Like, what do? We literally just have to watch this guy run away because we can't hit him. Oh, wait, we can Yules him up for 2.5 seconds. He can't take damage in this time. He can't heal from it. He drops. He'll heal from that 50 damage. Whoa. And then you wait a little longer for the rest of his ultimate, and then you kill him. Maybe he'll still get out because he has this like annoying aphotic shield and all that, but it helps. Now, Juggernaut. So, melee core that we can kite, but when he Omni Slashes you and you Yules, it wastes Omni Slash. It can still hit you, and it won't damage you. This is why it's so good against Juggernaut, because this ultimate is meant to instantly turn a fight into his team's favor. It is meant to kill 1 or 2 heroes, maybe more if you're really fed. It's meant to kill heroes really quickly and then set the fight into your favor as a like 4v5 or like turn the fight, whatever. It is supposed to be his time to kill someone while invincible. More or less, he's invincible. And then you just Yules and waste it. And it's like a 2-minute plus cooldown. Hilarious. Luna, same deal. Eclipse, can't hit you if you're in the air. Very helpful to survive. Can also be a way to dodge a couple Moonglaves if it's like in the base or something. Skywrath, say you get a toast and then he silences you and he drops his ult on you and you can't Force Staff or Glimmer yourself. Or like maybe you have those and you use those instead, but Yules can work for a save on yourself because you just lift yourself up, and this only lasts 2.4 seconds. So wait for him to ult because, I mean, make him commit it, right? Because otherwise he'll just wait for you to land and then he'll use it. The second he uses it, then you Yules, you dodge a lot of this damage. But again, Force Staff and a Glimmer will work as well, and those are usually more helpful to save allies. But it just depends on like the game. Darkseer, we talked about when he uses Surge, you just, if he surges himself, you lift him up right after that, and then when he lands, he doesn't have a speed boost. This is a long cooldown. I guess 10 seconds isn't that long, but that's kind of long enough to kill him usually. His like speed burst is his way out of a late game team fight. Now Axe, he blink calls your support, or I'm sorry, your carry. He blink calls 2 of them, let's say 2 of the carries in creep waves, and they're dead. He blade mailed, like your carries are gonna kill themselves on him unless you Yules him, and then they can't target him. Woo! Best support player in the game. Save them from Axe. Really helpful. And we'll get into it later, but you can also pre-cast it against him to try to prevent him from using Berserker's Call in the first place. Yeah, we're going to get that into just a second. So these are the heroes that I think of the most. And to be honest, Darkseer hasn't been in the meta in America anyways for a while. So like I didn't see against him. And honestly, using it to stop the surge is not the greatest use. But I think it does have it can be a pretty significant outplay against Darkseer. And I think as now he like rises in the meta again, well, that's kind of a weird spot, right? But as he gets popular, I think Yules is useful against him. I wouldn't buy it just because I see a Darkseer, but it's like, here are all these different reasons. Darkseer's in the game. I need mana, whatever. It adds to it. I tend to think of Kunkka the first the most, and that's why he's like first on this list. And then like these kind of carries, Luna to the left, and then these are kind of just like some extra ones that don't happen as often. Axe kind of does. He's kind of popular. But now let's go into like some less common scenarios, and we'll speed through these pretty quickly. Slardar Bounty, they ult you, and then they can just see you. Dispel it. Really helpful. Silencer. Ult. Doesn't want you to cast spells. Yules yourself. Cast spells. Very useful. Magnus and Earthshaker. So we'll talk into the pre-casting now against Axe. And actually, I'll just cut a clip in here. It's way easier to see it. So I'll cut this in, and then we'll return. Just kidding. It's going to be its own video. I started to record it. It's too long. Go back to the original content. There'll be a short follow-up video after this with the Yule's pre-casting tip. All right, we're back. So, Legion Commander, similar effect to Axe, but not as... Well, not that it's not as good, but Legion Commander will also, like, blink duel a carry, and her goal is to, like, kill them in that time, so you Yules her, and it's like, okay, cool, my carry can't hit them, but the enemy can still kill your carry if, like, the full team is there. I guess they can do that against Axe as well, so I don't quite know what the difference is here, why I split them, to be honest. I just feel like because Axe's is AoE, it feels worse to me, where if you have, like, multiple cores called in at once, it's, like, super important to Yules, otherwise your whole team dies. Whereas if Legion duels someone, it's like, all right, that's really unfortunate, but one person dies. Maybe that one person matters, you know, but Axe can kill one person, or he could kill the whole team with a good call. Bat Rider, we're wasting his duration on Flaming Lasso. When he ults someone, quickly Yules him. He can't move, so that way he can't, like, pull them into a bad position. Dark Willow, funny enough, she likes Yules. She hates Plague against Yules because people just Yules themselves. They get rid of Cursed Crown. They can dispel it before it goes off. They see the Terrorize coming in. They could Yules themselves and dodge it if they want. They see Bedlam going on top of them and say they're, like, rooted and they can't move. They can Yules. I don't know why I paused there. What else? Timbersaw. You have to be careful. If he casts Timber Chain, and then you Yules him, and then the Timber Chain hits a tree, it will pull him to it. But if you wait for him to Timber Chain, hit a tree, begin to move, Yules him right then, it'll interrupt the Timber Chain. And then the issue is it's only 4 seconds. So if you can't kill him in that, like, next half second before it's back up, he's just going to do it again. But this can still be enough time for you guys. Like, say your stun is almost off cooldown, or maybe you're a Jakiro and then you'll have that follow-up stun to buy more time. But it's just a good mechanic to know if you are using a Yules and Timbersaws in the game. Lifestealer is a hero where you're going to have to Yules yourself, but it's still nice. Because he's, like, raged, he wants to kill someone in this time, and you can't Yules him because he's raged. You Yules yourself, he can't hit you. He might move on to another target, and then he wants to kill you after you land. He's going to have to run back, that kind of thing. You're just kiting. Pudge, just another way to cancel. Faceless Void. Pretty nifty because if you see him coming into ult and you're in there, you can try to Yules him to prevent him from ulting, or you could Yules yourself so that at least for those 2.5 seconds, you're, like, flying in the air. He can't hit you. Then you land. Then he kills you, but at least you waste a bit of his time. Or if you're outside of the Chronosphere and he uses it on a teammate, you can try to Yules the Faceless Void if he's not BKB'd or, say, has a Manta or a Lotus or a Lincoln, something like that. Lotus is fine. It's the Lincolns I meant. And then you Yules him for 2.5 seconds and he can't hit people during his Chronosphere. It's about wasting this, like, small window he has to get a very impactful kill. Similar trend with, like, Ursa, Troll, those guys. Enigma, another way to cancel his ultimate. Cancel her channeling, cancel his channeling, cancel his channeling. Very nifty. Cancel his channeling, cancel his channeling. You can cancel his channeling, but it can also be a good way to dodge bounces. Same with Lich. So, like, say the spell is coming towards you and you Yules. You'll be invulnerable. It'll still hit you, and it will bounce to other things now. But it won't bounce back to you if you're Yulesed. So, say, for example, there's only 2 of you. 2 heroes right next to each other, and Lich wanted to ult you, and it bounced between you, kills you guys both. Or, he targets you, you Yules, it'll hit you, bounce to your ally, but then it will not come back to you, and the spell will just end. The bouncing disappears. Same with the cask. So, that can be another save mechanic. But again, you might just use a Force Staff or something like we've covered before, but this is just another way to address it. Storm Spirit. A really irritating part of Storm Spirit is when he defends a lane by just zipping out, zipping back in. Eul Scepter is instant, and so if you've got some fast fingers, it is technically possible to Eul's him as his ult lands and before he zips back. But it is pretty tough because he's untargetable while ulting, which means you have to be like spam clicking it as he stops moving. Which, honestly, this has very rare applications that you're against a Storm Spirit defending late game. But the reason I still want to point it out is because if you kill that Storm Spirit there, that's usually massive for the game. You probably like win right off of that. Well, I won't go that far, but it's like he thinks he can do that for free. And so if you kill him right there, that is really big. Yeah. Huskar, mixed effect here. So Huskar's also down here. We'll get into that. When Huskar ults you, you can dodge it because it does a lot of damage. If you Euls, or Euls him, I believe. No, actually, okay, now I'm not sure, guys. I don't know. Yeah, he's spell immune when he's leaping. So you can't actually use it on him, but you can use it on yourself, so you're not going to take that massive amount of damage when he hits you. We'll get into why he's bad once we get there. Spirit Breaker, very obvious when he's charging. You can target, you can Euls yourself to not get stunned, or you can Euls him to break his charging. If you see him charging away, use Euls on him. Same deal with the Bulldoze status resistance. It's nice to get the full duration Euls if you need that. So Disruptor, we already talked about why it's not good against Disruptor. It doesn't work on his Glimpse. And if it's late game Disruptor, he has the Ags. Maybe he doesn't even have the Ags. But you're setting up the ultimate for him if he was trying to target you. Kind of uncommon, I guess, as a support, but sometimes necessary. But you Euls, and he's like, oh, okay, cool. I'll just ult underneath you and then kinetic field. Thanks for setting it up. You know, not great. Oracle, Euls can be dispelled. But it's very awkward because heroes like Abaddon cannot target. Like, say Abaddon's ally gets Euls. He can't target that guy. Oracle, for whatever reason, can. I don't know why, but he can. He can channel it, and then he can dispel Euls. The other item that can do this is Nullifier, so you can't use Euls defensively. If they say they use Nullifier on you, you can no longer Euls yourself. As far as I know, I think Oracle is the only one. Oh, I'm sorry, Brewmaster as well has a AoE Dispel on his... we can't actually see the ability, but when he uses Primal Split, the Storm Panda has that... I think it's literally called Dispel, but I'm not sure. But it does that AoE Dispel, and it can also cancel your Euls. So these heroes have a way to do that. Very annoying. So Morphling, Death Prophet, Huskar, Alchemist. It's not the best against these heroes because they will still heal during Euls. Morphling will continue to morph strength if you have used Euls. Like, say he uses it and then you cast Eul on him. He will continue to morph strength in that 2.5 seconds. And when he lands, he's going to be a really tanky boy. Death Prophet, going to heal in that whole time. Huskar and Alchemist also will be healing. And so against these heroes, it's not such a good item for kiting or for setting something up. Whereas, like, you know, we can Euls this Ursa and then kill him after. Great. We Euls this Alchemist, he lands, and he's healed up to full health. So sometimes you'll still need to do it. You'll need to cast it on these guys, but it's rough. And Death Prophet in particular, with her ultimate going, you Euls her and you can't kill her for that 2.5 seconds, and her exorcism is like killing you in that time. Maybe her spirit siphon's going. It's difficult. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say about them. And then Tinker and Nature's Prophet, who can teleport away. It doesn't work as a channeling cancel against them, depending on what they're doing. So when he is rearming, or when he is trying to use his W, because he can just like pump fake it as much as he wants, right? You cancel his, let's say Nature's Prophet. He's trying to TP out with his W. You Euls him to cancel it. He lands. He immediately begins to channel it again. And if you don't have a stun, he's just going to get away. And you might still need to do that. That might buy you enough time, but it just doesn't feel as good as, say, Crystal Maiden trying to TP out. You Euls her. She lands. Her TP's on cooldown. She can't do it again. This guy, you can cancel his regular teleport, sure. But if his W is up, he will just continue to try to use it until he's out. And that's pretty irritating. Tinker, Mixed effect. It's nice against Tinker because you can dodge some rockets, but using it as a catch for him is limited. If you have some kind of follow-up for it, sure. But similar to his teleport, his rearm, which is kind of busted, which is why a lot of people don't like it, he can rearm blink out. And so if he starts channeling rearm and you Yules him, he'll land, and he'll immediately start trying to rearm again to blink out. So that is very irritating and makes it not so great as a catch item against Tinker, unless you have that follow-up. So like a Jakiro Ice Path or something, and I just need to cancel it right then, instantly, because my Ice Path is so slow, he would have finished and blinked out. But if I Yules him and then Ice Path, it's okay. That's when it's workable. I believe that's it. Now, there are other heroes I'm sure I didn't put on here that channel or, like, you can kite them. But again, it's just like the same applications as before. So I think that's it. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Goodbye.